Yo, what is going on? Welcome on back to the channel. Today, I'm excited to help you make more money because we are gonna be talking about how to do over $1 million per month with 7 different strategies. Now, last month, we helped 2 clients do over $1 million a month, and those clients pretty much consistently do about $1 million. Now, the 7 strategies I wanna be sharing with you, they don't necessarily use all 7 every single month. There are different months that we use different ones, and there are different clients that use different strategies. And so what I'm gonna be doing is going over the 7, and then I'm gonna go over the 2 clients that did $1 million, and you can see which strategies they use specifically and how they use them to help them do $1 million. And as usual, I am not gonna bullshit you. I am going to show you proof of the 2 clients and have them doing $1 million plus per month. Now, first client right here, you can see last month they did $1,059,000. The previous 31 days, the month before that, they did a little bit, $1,080,000. I'd like to see this at 1,1, 1,2, 1,3 plus, but obviously we're working our way there. Now the second client you can see right here, they did $945,000 in revenue, but they did $1 million in cash collected. Now I think there's a little bit something off in our reporting here, but you can see what really matters is the cash collected right here, right? Now what's cool about this client is like this month we really have been able to scale. So today is the 18th of February, and you can see we're already at $1 million and we have 10 days left. Now, unfortunately, February only has 28 days, which kind of sucks, but I'm hoping that we're gonna get around 1.5, maybe 1.6, possibly above that. We have a webinar tonight and a webinar tomorrow, and both of those should bring in at least $300,000 to $400,000, right? Then obviously we have another 9-8 days after that. So these are the 2 clients, and now what I want to do is I'm going to jump into my handy dandy whiteboard here, and I'm going to kind of show you basically like all of these strategies broken out and really detailed understanding of like how they're working, and then I will go into each of these 2 clients right here and which strategies they use specifically to do these results. All right, so we're going to be talking about doing $1 million per month. Right? And so the way that we do this are typically through the 7 different strategies. Now again, not every client uses all 7, and there are more than 7 strategies that you can use in your business, but these are the 7 that we found the most consistent, right? So the first strategy that we're gonna be talking about here, weekly webinars, right? Weekly webinars are one of my favorite strategies because you basically have 4 shots every single week or more, just to be clear, we'll cover that in a second, 4 shots every single week at literally getting yourself to $1 million plus, right? And so let's say, for example, every single week you produce $250,000, that's $1 million month, right? And so what you can do when you do weekly webinars is, what I like to do is I like to keep them relatively the same, right? You're not changing topics every single week. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, won't your audience get burnt out, or won't people see it multiple times? And yes, people may see it multiple times, but I will tell you that, let's say you get 30% show rate, there's 60% of people that didn't show up who will show up to the next one, right? And so it's okay to keep your webinars the same. And the reason it's also okay to keep your webinars the same is because you will consistently get better. You will consistently optimize. So you wanna keep them the same, and this allows you to optimize, right? Optimizing meaning you're going to optimize like your landing page for conversion. You're gonna optimize your text messages for show up rates. You're gonna optimize your presentation, your close, everything, right? And so if you do the same one every single week, you can optimize every single piece of it. Now, if you do different ones all the time, you're never gonna know what's working, what's not working, right? You wanna keep things consistent. What typically will happen is the first maybe like 2 or 3, you're finding that I'm making an error here, I'm having problems here, I'm not pitching correctly here. But then after you get through like 2, 3, 4 of them, you start to really get a really good groove of them. Like not only from like your ads, but into the presentation, into the close, right? And you start to see this really good consistency. When you get that consistency, now you can scale. So every single week, you have an opportunity to continuously like perfect it. You know what I mean? And so it works extremely well. So the same webinar, and you want to optimize it. Now, the other thing that we want to do is want to keep a fairly broad topic when we do weekly webinars. You don't want to get super, super, super niche. You want it to be broad to where it can run for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Like we have webinars that have ran for 6 months straight, And so you want to make sure it's broad. Don't get too broad. Don't get too detailed with these, right? Now, the cool thing about doing weekly webinars is, let's say, for example, your topic lasted for like 2 or 3 months. What you can do is you can then swap your topic out, and you can swap it out for another fairly broad topic, right? And so let's say if it started to burn out, you swap it for the other broad topic, you run that for 2 more months, then you swap back to the other topic. And all of this swapping will consistently keep them fresh. Like once you burn a webinar out, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's gone forever. It just maybe needs to cool off, new ads, new page, new look, bring a different one in. 3-4 months later, bring a different one in. Now, what I love about weekly webinars too is that you have 4 shots to absolutely crush it and hit $1 million a month. So basically all you have to do is hit 250K times 4, and that equals $1 million a month, right? You don't have to just ball out on one webinar, right? You can do this every single week. Now, you're not necessarily gonna just get this right off the bat. Like, this could take you 6 months to a year to the point of being able to do $250,000 a week per webinar. Now, and usually at this point, you need a lot of ad spend, right? So when you're doing just organic, you can probably get away with maybe $100,000, maybe $200,000 a month on weekly webinars, maybe a little bit more than that. But when you start to do this for at least 3-6 months, you're gonna start to burn out that organic audience, and you're going to need to move into paid ads. And paid ads is fun because you can then just turn the dial up. So for example, if I wanna do 250, let's say at the low end, at like a 4 or 5x ROI, to keep math a little bit easier here, let's say each week I spend 50K to get 250K. Right? So by the end of the month, I'm spending 200K to get 1 million. And so I know that every week if I spend 50K, I have a high chance of getting 250K. When it's just organic, you kind of almost have to cross your fingers and hope that you're going viral, right? So that's one of the things that when you're doing weekly webinars, you really want to get it to a consistent flow, and then you want to start to scale paid, and you want to start to really get a good idea of your ROI, right? Now, the second strategy that we're going to be talking about is monthly webinars. Now, there's an instance where you choose to do monthly or you choose to do weekly, right? And so what we find is with our clients that typically are very brand focused and they don't want to burn out their audiences, we're doing monthly webinars. Now, monthly webinars aren't bad to do. They just require a lot more spend and you get one shot, right? Like, you're trying to cram all sorts of spend and you're trying to do 500,000 plus per webinar, right? And so that usually creates it makes it a little bit harder to do, but it's very possible. We have clients that are doing $400,000 to $500,000 per webinar. And now we're gonna start to try to get us up to $1 million per webinar when we do these one big webinars, right? I don't necessarily love the monthly over the weekly. I would rather do weekly because we have more consistency, but the monthly ones are really good. Now, the monthly ones, you can choose really, really cool topics, right? So these ones you do not go broad. Now, these you want to go a little more niche, right? So you want to be niche. Now, when you're niche like this, because what you'll be doing is only once a month, you are basically like doing this like new event. And so all the people that follow you are getting hammered through this one event. Like, you're trying to literally slam at least 50% of your revenue through this one event, right? And so you're gonna be promoting really, really, really hard. And if you keep promoting really hard to your existing audience with the same exact webinar, people are going to get burnt out the following month, right? And so what we like to do is we like to go a little bit more niche. We like to go through a topic that is a little bit more unique to the personal brand or to you, right? You don't want to do like a super broad one. You want to be a little bit more niche because you don't have to do this weekly. It's just one really, really strong webinar, right? So don't go too broad. With this one, in terms of spend, one, you're going to promote it really, really, really hard to your existing audience. But two, spend here is where it gets a little bit tricky. Now, there's a couple videos that I did in the past where I'm going through a client's webinar where we did this right here. But you're going to be needing to spend, no lie, like 70 to 100K on one single webinar. One webinar, right? And so that's when things get very difficult because you have to spend $70,000 to $100,000 in about 7 to 10 days worth time, right? If you do anything past that, usually you're gonna get people that are registering too early, right? And if they register too early, then it's unlikely that they're gonna show up. So this takes a lot of skill set. I think doing monthlies takes a lot more skill set than doing weeklies. And so like you can start out at weeklies because you get a lot more reps in, a lot more tests in, and then eventually you can start to do big monthlies. Now, one of the cool things about both of these is you can actually do a combo, right? So you could do 1 + 2 combo. Now, what is this? Basically what we do is you do weekly and you do a monthly. And so you do weekly equals paid, right? So only paid ads. And then when you do monthly, you do paid plus organic. And this kind of gives you that like really, really cool sweet spot where you're getting that consistency with the weeklies, but you're literally doubling down and doing like a $300,000 or $400,000 webinar here with the organic and paid combination. Now, I love this. Now, the thing about doing this is this one is going to remain like your broad topic. Now, this one down here is going to be that like niche, unique topic, right? So just keep in mind, you can actually combine both of these strategies right here, and you can do them together. I love it. I think it works great. We do it on a couple clients. Now, number 3, so let's go. Number 3 here is evergreen webinars. Now, obviously evergreen webinars are a little bit different than your live webinars, right? These are where your webinar is basically looking like it's live, but it's running 24/7. Now, the thing about doing evergreen webinars is these work really well for the clients that like to do monthly, right? If a client is doing weekly, it doesn't make sense to do evergreen webinars because you're already doing weekly webinars. If they're doing monthly and during the downtime, you want a way to drive in more sales, drive in more traffic, then you're gonna wanna choose to do evergreen webinars. Now, there's a positive and minuses to do evergreen, right? The thing about evergreen, let's say the plus, we go here, let's do like positives, right? And we'll do negatives too, right? So positives to evergreen webinars is that you get a higher show rate, right? So show rate is much higher. And the reason show rate is a lot higher is because, let me see, how do I get rid of this thing? Get out of here. There we go. Show rate is higher. Now, the reason show rate is higher is because people can watch it just in time. We make just in time webinars. So just in time. And what a just-in-time webinar is that somebody will go to the page, they will opt in, and they can literally watch the webinar within 10 minutes, right? It basically starts on every every quarter of the hour, right? So like if they opt in at 7:05, the webinar is at 7:15. If they opt in at 7:25, the webinar is at 7:30, right? So every quarter of the hour, the webinar is actually like looking like it's live, right? And so people can watch right away. Now the downside to doing this, so let's look at like the negative. So negative to doing a evergreen webinar is you don't get like since they're not getting scheduled, you're not like hitting them with content before the webinar, right? So you have no prior content. So if somebody is cold, they don't know who you are, it's essentially like a really big VSL, right? There's more to it because there's engagement, there's people commenting and stuff like that, but it becomes a really big like video essentially, right? As opposed to like with a webinar, people are actually like scheduling a day and time, they're planning to show up at that day and time, and they like set that time aside. Throughout the 5 or 7 days that they're waiting, they're getting content, they're consuming content, they're sending videos, they're seeing testimonials, like they're getting framed pre-webinar. With Evergreen, there is no pre-framing. It's kind of like go watch the webinar and hopefully you like it enough to book a call or buy from us, right? And so that's one of the negatives to this. I actually really like Evergreen webinars. The other thing though is that they're colder, right? So if you have a sales team that complains about cold leads, like they actually might complain about these. But I will tell you that this is the happy medium between doing like just a VSL or like a video and doing a webinar, right? If you don't want to do live webinars all the time, you can do evergreen webinars where the people will watch 45 minutes to an hour and a half of you, which is enough time in my opinion to close on a deal, and then they will go to a sales call or they will close, right? Now you're not gonna have as high of a conversion because of the things that I stated right here, where there's no prior content, there's no like waiting and scheduling that timeout, but you will still get very good conversions if you don't like to do them live. So this is a really good way of coupling this with monthly, right? Now, number 4 is a VSL, which is essentially a video sales letter. Now, if you've never heard of a VSL, it's just basically a video on a page, right? It's a 10 to 20 minute video on a page. Now, the thing about the VSLs is that they used to work really, really, really well. They don't work as well anymore. And the reason they don't work anymore because people are very distrusting. Like 5 years ago, before everybody was a fucking coach. They worked really well because like no one really knew what all this stuff was. They would go, they'd watch this 10, 20-minute video, they would love it, and then they would book a call, find out more, and try to get rich, right? Now, no one trusts anybody. And so what happens with VSLs is typically they're very cold. And so if you've got a sales team who complains a lot about cold leads and that is not very good, you do not want to run a VSL. The only way that VSLs work is if you have an absolute killer sales team, okay? Like you need to have a badass sales team, right? If you don't have a badass sales team, the other thing that you would need is just like an absolute home run offer. Like it has to be like, we do all of it for you and it's free. You don't pay us until you make money. Like something that is literally completely irresistible. But if it's not, and if it's your standard coaching offer, usually this is going to be very, very, very difficult. Again, because think about it this way. Somebody comes from a paid ad, and now this is on the paid side. Like organic, this actually works fine. So just to be clear here, like let's just put paid is hard, right? Organic is possible, right? So paid is hard, but it's not impossible. It's just harder, right? And so if you're doing paid, you think about it, somebody essentially goes from an ad to VSL, and then they go to call, right? And so they saw a 30-second ad to a 10-minute VSL to a call. How likely are they to just like whip out their credit card and buy from you? Highly unlikely, right? And so these become very difficult, but if you have a good sales team and you've got a really good offer, if you have a good sales team or a really good offer, it works. But if you have a good sales team and a good offer, these work really well. Where these also work really well is like a higher income individual, right? A higher type of offer where you're trying to attract people who have money in less time. And usually those are the more like done for you type of offers, like the no bullshit, straight up, this is what you get, right? And so like these are more direct, right? So you're not necessarily always trying to like teach in these, but if you have a really good offer for a rich person, like for example, let's say for example, you're like, hey, when Amazon done for you was really big, right? Like you could have a VSL that's like, hey, this is how we help our clients run their entire Amazon store and they make $20,000 a month, right? Boom. It's very non-compliant in a way, and those all got shut down. But those were really good for VSLs because somebody who has the money, who has $100,000, $200,000 to invest, goes to a page, watches a quick 5-minute video, sees what they're interested in, books a call. Those work great, but that also comes down to the home run offer, right? Like we do it all for you, right? And so this is more, again, works for affluent audiences, right? Very, very affluent people aren't as inclined to watch webinars, right? Now they will watch webinars, just to be clear, somebody who really wants to learn, but somebody who has a lot of money that doesn't have a lot of time, they're not always gonna be the ones that hop on webinars, right? And so number 4 is VSL. Now, number 5 is IGDN. Now I know you've probably done Instagram DMs, and so there's 2 ways to do Instagram DMs. The reason why Instagram DM typically works good is because it's almost like just like pre-framing somebody and having conversation and warming them up, right? And so the first one obviously is like organic. Like send people to your DM, right? Like when you're in your post, you say, you've seen the mini chats where it's basically like, oh, comment the word blank or DM me the word blank, right? Then they hop into your DM and you get to have a conversation with them very casually, right? Like if you were to get people via text is a little bit more intrusive, right? But DM is one of those things that you can casually have a conversation, and if you stop writing to them or they stop writing to you, it's not that bad to just shoot a little follow-up, right? And they're following you already. So if they've DM'd you before and you see that they like something else, you can then go DM again, hey, I noticed you like that, like tell me a little bit about X, Y, and Z, right? And so DMs are a really cool way of building relationship. Now, with DMs, you can also do paid, right? And so if you do paid DMs, remember the same type of thing, honestly, pretty much like the VSL, these people are going to be colder, right? You're gonna have to have long ass conversations with them. You're going to have to really, really dig into their pain points, maybe send some voice messages, like talk to them for a long time. And if you can talk to them for a long time, you can start to build that relationship and build that trust. Like if this is somebody that has not followed you, that just saw an ad that sounded interesting, this is essentially, if you think about it, it's almost like a short funnel. It's almost like the funnel itself is like, the VSL is essentially almost like the ad. They watch this little 30-second ad right here, and then they go to DM. So basically it goes like this, right? So they see an ad, then they go to DM, they have a conversation, and they go to call, right? And so this could be, you know, a 30-second ad, but this could be like 7 days, right? Like they could be talking to you for like 7 days straight. And then eventually when they're ready, they go to the call. Now the cool thing is, when you're doing this type of strategy up here, you can't really decide who jumps on a call. They just go and they book themselves. But when you do this, you can pre-qual. So we can pre-qualify all of these people here before you hop on a call. So you don't waste your time. You can be very strict, right? And you, again, build that relationship. So these are super relationship driven. Right? So relationship driven. And the cool thing is when they get to the call, they're much easier to close. So you do a lot of this pre-work up front because someone manually has to have this conversation, right? Usually you'll have setters and stuff like that, but someone has to have that conversation and then they go to book a call, right? And so number 6 is what we call quiz funnels. Now quiz funnels are really cool because you can start to customize the outcome from anybody who answers the questions. And so what you typically will start with is some type of like application process. So a quiz funnel goes like this. So basically they'll go to a page and that page is gonna have a quiz on it. And the quiz is kind of like an application. They're gonna answer like 5 to 7 questions. And then depending on one of the questions, so depending on, let's say this is how much money they have, like a money question, right? So this is your money question. Depending on what they answer, let's say you have like 0 to 10K, 10 to 50K, 50K plus, let's just say, right? And so anybody 0 to 10K, you send them to a specific like VSL, right? Someone 10 to 50K, you send them to a different VSL. Someone 50K, you send them to a different VSL. And so what this allows you to do is almost customize the experience for somebody. So if you have a very broad type of audience and you're like, hey man, you know, one VSL, one video, one webinar, it's really difficult to get these 3 different types of avatars, right? Like this dude down here is totally different than the guy up here, 0 to 10. So a quiz funnel is really valuable in doing this strategy, right? You can literally customize this. And what you want to make sure you do to keep this very simple is you want one question, right? You don't want like the quiz funnel to veer off, like if they answered this and this and this, they go here. If they answered this, this, and this, they go here. It's like, have them go through basic questions to get an idea. And if they answer like the money question 0 to 10, put them in this bucket. Because the thing you really only care about is the money, right? So 0 to 10, they go here, whatever, right? You want to veer them off. Again, the reason I love this is because it's more customized, right? Very customizable so that you can really talk to these people. And if you know your avatars and you're like, hey, anybody who has 0 to 10K, this is the strategy you should be using, then this is perfect for you, right? If you can just basically be like, hey, like, let's say for example, you really have one big avatar and like you only sell to like rich people, then like you can use a regular VSL, or you only sell to like, you know, people who typically have a job under 100K, like you don't need this. You can typically use a VSL or a webinar, right? But if you're doing it to like multiple levels of people where you can help somebody who has 0 to 10K, but you can help somebody else, like for example, in real estate offers, you can help somebody who has $10,000 to $20,000, but you can also help somebody who has 20 to 100. And then you could also help somebody who has like 500,000 and above, right? You can teach them different strategies in each level, right? And so this works really well for somebody who is at different levels, right? So quiz funnels are awesome. I love quiz funnels if they're done correctly. Now, number 7, one of the ones that I have really, really enjoyed the most are multi-day events, right? And so it's a little bit different than a webinar. A webinar is typically like a one-day type of thing, but multiple day events can be things like challenges, paid events. You can do like 2-day workshops. Like all of these things work really well. And so kind of like we talked about in the beginning is when you're looking at marketing and you're looking at the industry nowadays, everybody's been so burnt that the more time you spend with somebody, the more likely you are to convert, right? And so if you spend 1 day with somebody, you have a pretty high likelihood of converting them. But if you spend 2 or 3 or 5 days with somebody on a challenge, they're literally eating out of the palm of your hand and they're ready to convert. Like their card is literally in their hand, right? And so doing multiple day events or even just webinars in general, the premise of it all is how do we get somebody from cold to closed the fastest way possible, right? And so when you think about like somebody that follows you on Instagram, somebody that follows you for 3 months, 6 months, a year, like they are fully ingrained into your business. Like they love your business, they know you, they like you, they trust you. Like if you were to hit them up, they're likely going to say, yeah, you know what, I'm open to hopping on a call. But when you do things at scale and you're like trying to hit 1 million plus per month, like you're gonna have to go into cold audiences. You are not gonna be able to just cherry pick your organic audience for the most part. Like you're gonna have to go cold. And when you go cold, that's when you need to figure out, how do I take somebody literally from cold to closed in the fastest amount possible? Like I'm not talking about somebody that's been following you for 3 to 6 months, right? I'm talking about someone that sees an ad and within 7 days, they turn into money. That's what we want to do. And so if you're having trouble with webinars, you're still not converting, try multiple day events. Spend more time with these people. What we find sometimes is like what we like to do is let's say like month over month. Let's say month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example, right? Now, what we'll do is like month 1, we'll do a regular webinar, right? Month 2, we might do a regular webinar. But month 3, we might do like a 2-day, right? Month 4, we might do regular one. Month 5, we might do like a 3-day challenge. That was terrible. But a 3-day challenge, right? And so you can see what we do is we like to also stagger things. If we're getting good results with a webinar, we don't necessarily want to force us to have to do a 2-day, because I've seen us get very good results the same that you would with like a 2-day event or a 3-day event. Like you can still get the same results on a webinar when done correctly. But if you're consistently doing webinars a lot and your audience is like sick of the webinars, they know they're gonna hop on, they know they're gonna get pitched, you throw in a little 2-day banger, oh dude, like they're suddenly all super jazzed up. Or you throw in a 3-day challenge, oh, all these people are like thinking it's a brand new thing. They're still gonna get fucking pitched, but they're gonna get pitched day 2 and 3, right? But you're gonna give them more and more and more value. You just have to kind of tweak things and switch things up so they seem normal. And the way, seem different. And so the way that we do this, you can either call them challenges or we call them workshops, right? So challenges and workshops, right? 2-day workshop, 3-day workshop, 3-day challenge, 5-day challenge. And they're not really challenges, like we're not necessarily challenging people to do anything. It's just a 3-day event, you know? And we're just like literally sharing what we know in a longer version, right? So like in terms of a webinar, you're condensing that into about an hour presentation. With a 2-day, you're just stretching out in 2 days. With a 3-day or a 5-day, you're stretching it out in 5 days. And the goal is just to really get someone to spend more time with you so that they like, know, and trust you. All of this, the easiest way to close deals is literally like, know, and trust. That is the key, especially in this marketplace when you're playing the coaching game. Like people have to trust you. If they do not trust you, they will not buy from you. And the way they trust you is to spend more time with them. Like these things are amazing. I love doing multiple day events. They're a lot harder to set up, but if you can do them well, you can literally do 500K to $1 million just with one multiple day event, right? And so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jump into our clients and I'm gonna show you the things that they actually did so that you can see what they did, how they did it, the results, so you know it's true, plus you know like what they were able to stack in order to get these results. All right, so client number 1 right here who did $1,059,000 in the previous 30 days, they also did over $1 million. They typically are doing a few different strategies. Number one, they're doing a VSL strategy. Number two, they're doing DMs, right? So mostly like organic. We're not doing paid DMs. So they're doing DMs for organic. And then they're also doing one big monthly webinar, right? So they're not doing the weekly webinars, they're doing monthly webinars. And so essentially what we do here is we track everything based off like paid, organic, live training, and then evergreen, right? And so you can see right here, paid, and then the evergreen, for some reason, some of these are tracking from here. We didn't actually run an evergreen, just to be clear here. But basically the paid one right here, this is all VSL, right? And so the VSL strategy, again, is when you send them from an ad to a page with a video, then an application to book a call, right? And so you can see we spent $77,000 on this strategy here. We had 46 closes at a 4.81, $373,000 in revenue from just the VSL paid ads strategy. Now, just organic, this is typically where it's gonna be mostly like DMs, right? So they're using Instagram DMs for organic. Sometimes they're using the VSL if someone clicks the link in bio or they wanna send the video to them. But for the most part, there's a conversation happening in the DMs, right? And so you can see right here, we had 200 booked calls, 25 closes, $263,000 in total closed value. Now down here, you can see the webinar that we ran. So this is the one big monthly webinar that I talked about, $109,000. We did 52 closes, 270 booked calls, 3.86, $422,000 in revenue, right? And so in total, down here at the bottom, you can see we spent $187,000 throughout the entire month, and we brought in $1,059,000. Now again, they use the VSL strategy, which we highly focus the VSL strategy on the paid ads. Number two, they do the DM strategy, which is highly focused on the organic side of things. And number three, we did the webinar, the one big monthly webinar. Now that is actually promoted paid and organic and also through our newsletter, right? And so this client in particular, you can see the breakdown. The cool thing about doing multiple strategies is that you stack these multiple strategies. So we don't have to bank on like a one webinar doing the million. We can say, hey, we can get almost $400,000 from this one. We can get $260,000 from this one, and we get $422,000 from this one, right? And all of those combined are now equaling over $1 million a month. So really all we have to do is do 400 here, 300 here, and like 300 or 400 here, which is a lot easier than saying, hey, this one strategy has to get us to $1 million, right? And so that's client number one. Here, this is the webinar that we ran too, the big webinar. It was a 2-day workshop, so we did a multiple day event. Now, not just a single one, it was a multiple day, 2-day workshop. We ended up getting 5,964 live attendees there in total, right? And so some of these are a little bit of carryover. I think in total of like single people, like unique people, it was like 4,800. But you can see 5,000, almost 6,000 views, right? So 6,000 people were watching live, whether it was day one or day two or combined between the two, right? So really, really cool. This was a great event. Obviously we did 422, which I think we should have done like 600, kind of sucked, but you're still pulling in $400,000 on a on a one live training, which is a 2-day workshop. So they use the multiple day events. And this is the other client. You can see 945,000 like we talked about before, but down here over $1 million in total collected. And so with this client, we run 0 VSLs, right? And so the reason why, and this is why it's really important to look at your business and what you have available to you and what strategy works best for you, because that other account has very, very, very good salespeople, really strong team, really strong brand. This account, unfortunately, does not have great salespeople. Like they kind of complain, they don't do a ton of stuff, like they'll whine about the leads. Like we literally used to send all the leads to them from webinars, and we actually cut them off because they kept complaining, saying the leads were broke, and we started selling directly on the webinar, and we started hitting $1 million months. And the sales team was not closing like shit. They were complaining every single webinar, and it was just a nightmare. We cut them out, and we just started making more money without salespeople. Now, it doesn't work on every account, right? So it might not work for you to cut out your salespeople, but we don't end up doing VSLs because of the fact that the sales team is not very strong on this account, right? The other thing that they do on this account is a little bit of organic, not great, a little bit of Instagram DMs. It just does not do as well as I'd like, but really where we shine here are weekly webinars, right? And so with this account, we do weekly webinars, plus we also do that one big monthly webinar. So the strategy I mentioned where there's that weekly and then you can stack it with a monthly webinar is what we do on this account. So this client in particular does have a very good personal brand. They just don't get a lot of consistency through like Instagram DMs and stuff like that to get them to sales calls. So what we do is we just run live trainings. We just run webinars. Every single week we run a webinar. Most of it is paid. And then what we'll do is we'll couple it with one that we promote organic. So it's organic and paid, and then all the other weeks are just paid, right? And so you can see right here, we spent $118,000, $963,000 down here. So this works extremely well depending on the client. Like this client loves running webinars. He's totally cool with spending 2 or 3 hours on a Tuesday night. Like we have one tonight, and he's gonna absolutely crush it. He usually does like 200K plus on each one. And then what's really cool about last month is we started running 2 webinars a week with 2 different types of products, 2 different types of topics, right? And so I'll show you real quick right here. This is the one webinar that we were running. You can see this is basically the 3 weeks in the month right here, over 4,000 live attendees, 19,000 registrants. And the other webinar that we were running right here, you can see we're actually running a couple this month, but I'll just go to the first one that we ran here. And this is one of the cool things about switching up webinars, and this is gonna look kind of like shit because it adds them all up. Like if I do all sessions right here, you'll see 35%, right? I don't know why it does that, it's kind of annoying. Anyway, 2,700 registrants, 761 live attendees, and we ended up booking like 200 calls from this. It was like 220 calls. It was insane, right? Like if we go back to our reporting right here, you can see, I think we ran it like this week right here, 242 booked calls right there. 242. So this one in particular, we ended up sending them to booked calls because it's a $5,500 offer, right? So the other offer is $2,400 that we send just directly to buy. This one's a little bit expensive to send them directly to buy. So we sent them to the sales calls. Now the good thing about this is that it's an actual product and combined with coaching. So it's a little bit more like they don't need to trust as much because it's an actual product that they get. And so 242 booked calls off of one webinar, right? Crazy. And so that is exactly how we were able to do $1,029,000 down here in total cash collected, right? And so between both of these clients, you can see that things are a little bit different, and it depends on your business. So think about what you have available to you. Think about, do you have a good sales team? Think about, are you willing to do weekly webinars? Do you have more than one product? Do you want to send them to a sales call? Do you want to sell directly on the webinar? And then go out there and test. Like I said, the second client here in particular, we sent them directly to sales calls at first, and we would book 200 calls, 150 calls per webinar. Sales team would close like 15 of them. And we were like, well, what do? We need to like figure out how do we make more money, because it can't just be the leads being shitty all the time. You know, I'm a marketer. I'll take the blame if the leads suck, but the reality is like if the sales team cannot close them, let's test it without a sales team. And bam, we tested without a sales team, and we skyrocketed this business. And then we just started bringing in that other product that's $5,500, and we brought the sales team kind of like back in the mix, right? And so think about your business. Think about those 7 different strategies to help you make money. Now, you may not make $1 million, but if you want to make your first $100,000 or $500,000, try some of these strategies, test them out, see how they work for you, and hopefully you can do the same thing, start making more money. So I hope that this was helpful. Comment below if you have any questions. There's also a couple resources you can get below. I'm happy to help you, happy to answer any questions, and I'm here to serve you and make you more money. All right, see you soon. Bye.